Married or single, father or fatherless, doesn't matter. We're calling you to the Man Cave right now. Conversations from the Cave is a raw self-help podcast dedicated to discussing men's issues, from pornography to parenting, from religion to real life, from learning to loving. We discuss the real issues that affect real men every day. Join us each week for powerful, revealing Conversations from the Cave. Now, your host, Kirk Kennedy.
Happy Sunday to you. I am Kirk Kennedy, your host of Conversations from the Cave. I'm joined in the cave today by three terrific guys. Four of us total. We've got Slim in the house. Man, how you doing, sir?
I'm pretty good.
Good to have you back. It's been a few weeks. You've been traveling the country.
Yes, that's right.
Understood. Glad to have you back, man. How does it feel to be back in the cave this week?
Happy to be here.
Nice. We've also got Nola73 to my right. Man, how you doing? It's been a minute.
Yes, it has. I'm doing real fine. Just got off the road this morning from Indiana, so I'm ready to get at it.
This brother is dedicated. This brother drove from Indiana. You started out yesterday, getting here early this morning?
Man, it was probably it was early this morning. I don't know exactly what time I got on the road, but it was early in the morning. Just jumped on the road, broke a lot of speeding laws, and
oh man,
I'm here.
Well, we know that you're going to be bringing some raw comments today, and I'm so glad you're in house. We are joined, and we've been talking about this for the last 2 weeks. We've been joined by the, Alabama State Rep for Celebrate Recovery, Roy Kane. Welcome to the Cave, Roy. How's it feel to be in the cave, man?
That feels pretty awesome. I like it.
I am so happy you're here. We've talked a little bit about the importance of dealing with addictions and dealing with some of the challenges that we face, all of us face. Right? And Celebrate Recovery has been one of those places that has dealt with hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, Roy, first of all, kind of take us back to the days before on your journey, and then kind of carry us through where you've come from, and kind of give us a backdrop so that people know about your journey.
Well, I used to abuse alcohol and drugs quite a bit. I, had a lot of infidelity with my first wife, but I had this one particular addiction, pornography.
We've talked about this on the show over and over. It is a tough one to break. Absolutely.
Yep. And back in 1994, I gave up pretty much everything except pornography. And all the other habits I had were external habits where I had a lot of accountability. But I became an expert at keeping pornography a secret. In fact, it was a secret life. I just was able to do it whenever I wanted to without anybody knowing about it. And I didn't have to tell anybody. And I just I let it linger for way too long.
When you started out, you mentioned that there was some alcohol, there was some drugs. Was there a hurt that you were dealing with, or was there a challenge along the way? All of us have kind of dealt with a variety of hurts, and we all deal with them in different ways. But typically when addiction comes into the life, it's usually dealing with our hurt.
Yes, as I've come to learn, I had a lot of root causes of my addiction. Low self-worth, fear of rejection, fear of failure, and I struggle with impulsive behavior as well, so I had a lot of things that were root causes of my addiction. The fear of rejection, pornography doesn't tell you no.
It's true, and neither do the women in the things. They never say no. Right. They're always willing, anytime, any place, anywhere.
That's right.
So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, I heard you say that you had many addictions and you got rid of all of them, but pornography was the one you stayed with. With getting rid of the maybe alcoholism, was that tough for you?
Actually, not really. I don't think I really was. It's hard to say that I was addicted to alcohol, but I abused alcohol.
Okay. Can you explain the difference?
I didn't feel like I had to have it every night, But when I drank to get drunk. I didn't know when to stop drinking once I started drinking. That was probably my biggest problem.
What about the stuff that happened while you were drinking? Because typically it's not even the amount that people consume. It's just what happens when you are drinking.
Well, I used to call it liquid courage because, a little bit of that and then a raging sexual addiction led to many one-night stands, and I even, unprotected encounters with prostitutes.
Yep.
Alcohol made me do things that I normally would not do.
There are a lot of people who actually black out when they have, do stuff, and whether it be Coke or whether it be alcohol, and they really aren't actually they are numbing the pain, but then their inhibitions drop. And when their inhibitions drop, then other things enter into it, and a lot of behaviors are not easily controlled once imbibing alcohol occurs. So you started out there, so we know that you started there, but that's not where you are now. So
Right.
What happened between the alcohol, drugs, the women, the prostitution, pornography, and where you are now sitting across from us, clean, sober, and helping other guys get there? How did you get there?
Back in 1994, I did rededicate my life to Christ.
Okay.
And I was pretty much gave up everything then, except the pornography was the one thing that just lingered. And I just, like I said, it was so easy to keep it a secret that I didn't feel forced
To change it.
to change, I guess.
Yeah.
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 When you got rid of the other stuff, did you start watching more porn? Did that have
like
an effect?
creating a void.
Yeah, or was it pretty much the same? It didn't escalate as an issue after you got rid of the rest of the stuff.
I wouldn't say that's what increased the pornography addiction, but certainly things like the internet coming along and things like that definitely.
Oh, the availability.
Yes, the availability
Mm-hmm.
definitely increased my pornography addiction. I think when I rededicated my life to Christ and gave up all those other things, I started getting involved in the church. And so that kind of was the void that I filled, I filled it
You
with
filled
church.
it with Christ.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big thing for me. I started getting involved with church. And that's why the pornography addiction was such a thorn in my side. It was definitely counter to anything I was doing now. And I just became very sick and tired of being sick and tired of this addiction.
Right.
So, would you say that the church was your accountability partner?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The church was my accountability partner. I used to smoke too. That was probably the one addiction that was the hardest one that to this date that I've given up, was smoking cigarettes. And it just, it didn't look good for me to be sitting out in front of the church smoking cigarettes. So I decided I was going to give it up. And the funny thing about alcohol is I said, I'm going to give up alcohol so I can quit smoking.
A lot of people do alcohol and cigarettes together.
I didn't even relate the fact that I abused alcohol at that time. I just knew that I wanted to quit smoking, so I gave up drinking, because I had actually quit smoking for a 2-year period once and was out drinking and started smoking again.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So I was giving up alcohol for giving up smoking.
Now, I'm glad you said that about smoking, because of course, we all have watched television shows and we get the commercials where they will present to you the cause to stop smoking by smoking something called Juul or some type of electric cigarette. What are your take on that?
I think we just don't know enough about it yet. And I think it may have some health risks that we just don't know about. But I think getting rid of cigarettes is a good thing, no matter how you do it. But I think that going the way of the
Smokeless
cigarettes or whatever it is, I think that may have some risk too. I think it may be just covering up one addiction for another.
Right.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Conversations from the Cave Show with host Gert Kennedy and the CFTC crew. You can search for the CFTC podcast on Alexa and Siri. CFTC is also available for download on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, Tumblr, Podcast Republic, and Google Play Music. Want your church or men's group to host the next CFTC Live Man Up Conference? Contact the crew on provoxmediagroup.com/man up. Now, back to the Man Cave with Kirk Kennedy and the CFTC crew.
We're back with Roy Kane of the Celebrate Recovery, Alabama State Rep for Celebrate Recovery. He's been sharing his testimony about coming through alcoholism, coming through drinking, coming through sex addiction, and now he is on the other side of it, and he's telling us there was a journey. Let's talk about it. So you got through the alcohol, got through the one-night stands, decided not to be a sex addict. First of all, how did you deal with all of that flood of energy not being expended on these things? How did you handle that? I mean, for all of us who have dealt with anything, you talked about a void needing to be filled, but what about the energy? Because it takes effort to do those things. So how did you work it so that you were able to balance your life? Did you center it around church? Did you take steps to accomplish it? How did you get there?
No, I did. I centered it around church. I was very active in the church. And even when my job down in Panama when I was in the Air Force was to travel all over Central and South America fixing embassy radios. And so when you're away from home that much, that was when I would do a lot of my partying and a lot of my activities, that extramarital activities and things like that. But I would do things like when I'd go to a country like Bolivia, I would look for an English-speaking church just to experience that in a foreign country. And so that was something I really enjoyed doing, is actually getting involved with the Christians in these foreign countries. And so I don't know, I just really tried to fill it up with church and just do.
Do you think that church typically is receptive to people on a journey through chemical dependence or through addiction? Do you find that churches are generally receptive? A lot of guys on our, in our listenership don't really value church because they're kind of disenfranchised. They don't really, they're not really feeling the whole religious vibe thing. So we're dealing with a lot of millennials. We're dealing with a lot of, Z generation folks who they think church is fake. So what do they do?
Well, I think there is some truth to the fact that there's a lot of churches there's a lot of condemnation and judgment. And so for me, I can only speak for me, but I put on a mask. I was not able to safely tell my issues in church. So that is an issue. I think that, and that's why I'll talk about it later, but Celebrate Recovery was such just a refreshing way of doing church.
You just hit on it. You talked about how church tends to have a standard and a structure, and you have to live up to it.
Yes.
Whereas Celebrate Recovery, you drew a stark contrast, and you talked about the importance of doing a completely different thing. They're doing authentic self-inspection and authentic revelation without judgment. So you can reveal yourself without judgment. Is that part of the healing? Tell us a little bit about that thought process that happens with CR.
Well, absolutely. You have to, James 5:16 from the Bible says that you have to confess your sins to one another and pray for each other so that you may be healed. So the Bible is saying that you don't confess for forgiveness to each other, but it's part of the healing process is to confess to each other. And, when you're not holding these secrets in, you're able to find this healing from it. And so, because there's a healing power in saying it out loud.
Right.
And bringing it out into the open. And so
and letting it go.
And letting it go.
Yeah.
Do you think it's about acceptance? Like when you express it in a way, you're acknowledging that it happened, and everyone else accepts you for that too. It's like this.
So that's unifying to the body.
Right. And it's almost like expressing your shame, and getting it acknowledged. I think that is powerful.
I think also the reason why a lot of us don't come forward with a lot of the things is because we're embarrassed. And one of the things I was talking to a friend of mine about is sometimes we have to first realize in the steps to recovery is to get over being embarrassed.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
how do I tell someone that, man, I've been sleeping with all of these women? Well, that's easy, man. There's a lot of people over here that's been sleeping with women. Okay, but let's be a little bit more particular. I've been sleeping with all these heavy women. I've been sleeping with these crackhead women. Now that's particular. Now, man, you mean to tell me your self-esteem was that low? You couldn't get with nobody like a Beyonce or somebody like So the first thing is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed to tell you who I've been doing things with. I'm embarrassed and until you find that support group and not the hierarchy that just look down and say, well, with the finger pointing at you, this is the way. No, it's not about the way God is doing it. Just meet me where I'm at. Talk to me from where I'm at right now, and then let's get to that point over there.
That's good. It's a good point. You were going to have a comment?
Yeah, I was, for years, I was actually molested by my Boy Scout leader. And until I came to Celebrate Recovery, I couldn't tell anybody that. I was too embarrassed. The fact that I had been made a victim from this guy, I couldn't tell people that. And so Celebrate Recovery gave me an opportunity to say that out loud for the first time in my life as an adult.
That was one of the more poignant aspects of your testimony when I heard it.
Yeah.
I was in Celebrate Recovery, and hearing him tell his testimony was mind-blowing. To see the journey that you've been on, and then to recognize that you were able to forgive those hurts and to forgive those people and to move to a centered place of health and healing was remarkable. And I think the thing why I wanted to share this with our group is because I don't know, I think we're all on we all have had circumstances in our lives that have not been pleasant and that we might have been victimized by. And the fact that someone is able to freely say, okay, I have had to deal with forgiving this. I'm able to do that. How are you able to do that? And what gave you the strength to do that?
Well, I first had to, when I first started, when it first happened, and, for years, I buried it deep inside and just pretended it didn't happen. And I thought that's how I was supposed to deal with it. And then coming to Celebrate Recovery, taking a 12-step, I had to ask myself, well, how do I really feel about this? Mm-hmm. And I discovered that I was carrying a lot of resentment about this guy because he did this to me, and so, again, saying it out loud and confessing it to my accountability partners and my sponsor, I was able to get it out, and I was no longer holding this secret inside. And I was able to just feel some relief and healing from it. And that, just over time, I was able to say, you know what? I do forgive the guy. I mean, I wish I had said something way back when. I wish, he may be still doing it to kids now. I don't know.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
But
maybe he's listening to this show.
Maybe so.
Maybe this guy can be helped by hearing that whatever hurt he's dealing with that's causing him to act out, he can get healing, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have the show, not just for the abused, but for the abuser.
Because they have been abused at some
right.
point too.
Yeah.
So that's a good point you bring up, and I wanted to touch upon that. So you talk about your journey that you went through, and there are a lot of people out there that are dealing with these issues, but they don't even know that they need to be on this journey.
Right.
So with that, I want to ask you, what was it that led up to you wanting to change? How did you realize that, okay, I need to do something about this. This is not right. This is not how I should be living.
Well, because like I said, I was in church, and this was so contrary to anything I was trying to do. It was the one thing in my life that didn't fit in, and I was just so sick of it. And but I had tried so many times on my own to quit, and it just, it's just utter failure. I would give it up for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most, and then I'd be right back in it, and not only right back in it, but just, almost more, almost binge watching after, being out for 2 or 3 weeks from it. So It was a
It's like any other addiction with chemical components. You were
Yeah.
getting ready to say
Basically, what I was going to ask is, when you was a kid, did you have any exposure to the church as a kid?
I had very little.
Very little, but you was exposed, because the Bible talks about, if you train up a child in the way they should grow, when they're older, they will not depart. So most of the time, when we have that exposure to Christ, it's easier for us when we done fell low to come back to Him, because that's kind of like a safe haven.
Yes.
But when you get that safe haven, nurture and love, you start to grow back all over again. And then when you grow, you have a newfound look on how you're going to worship or reverence the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing, and this is just open for discussion, what do you do when you have kids that was in your position, that's in that situation now where they're being taken advantage of, that don't have a voice or feel like they don't have a voice? There's no institutions to a degree set up where they can go and confess, what's happening to them by somebody that's older, and know that they're not going to get in trouble, because I've had kids that have told me that they was threatened if I told they was going to do this and that, and so they don't want their mama to get killed, they don't want their daddy to get killed, but they harboring all of this pain and they're suffering. And so what would you give, what kind of advice?
I don't know if I could give advice for that. I mean, the kids are threatened, and their families are threatened. I mean, what is a kid going to do? I mean, I don't know. I know that Celebrate Recovery has programs for kids, which is awesome. We call it pre-counseling.
Is there a website for somebody that's listening that they can, go to or something?
Yes, celebraterecovery.com.
Okay.
And we
Is
do,
it .com or .org?
It's .com.
.com. CelebrateRecovery.com. Okay, spelled all the way out.
And there's a group locator on the website where you can find Celebrate Recoveries. You can find Celebrate Recoveries that have the programs for kids, and it's there's not a whole lot of them out there, but there's some in this area.
Okay.
That have the kid component.
They have the kid component. We have it at Restoration Church. We have the kids component. There's also a teenage component. We don't have that one yet, but there are churches out there that have it. So we try to give kids the opportunity to be able to express things like this, because it is an issue. I mean,
so if a kid went to this website, what do you say? Could they stay anonymous?
All Celebrate Recoveries are anonymous.
Okay, so we're basically, I'm just trying to get clarification so that
Yeah.
they can know that they have a safe haven, because most of them don't want to give their identity. Again, going back to being embarrassed or ashamed that they allow something to happen, and so you can stay anonymous. If you know your attacker, you can, once we reach out in contact, we can probably move further with the process of healing.
yes, all Celebrate Recovery meetings are anonymity and confidentiality are basic requirements. We always say what's shared in the group stays in the group. Of course, the only exception is when someone threatens to injure themselves or others. But that's what really keeps it a safe place. And it's gender specific. Men meet with men, women meet with women. My wife works in Celebrate Recovery as well. She doesn't have a clue what's going on with the guys. I don't have a clue what's going on with the women. And so, it's a basic requirement that really keeps it a safe place where you can share some of these deep, dark secrets or some of these deep, dark hurts and find healing. Because we realize.
We'll be right back.
The Conversations from the Cave Show is brought to you by the Alabama Cornea Care Center, Northern Alabama's first irregular cornea and sclera lens referral center. Dedicated to the management of complex irregular cornea cases, they provide hope and compassionate care for patients suffering from keratoconus, refractive surgery complications, and degenerative eye diseases. Call 256-937-1213 or visit alabamacorneacare.com for more details. Now, back to the Man Cave with Kirk Kennedy and the CFTC crew.
We're back. We're talking in the crew with Roy Kane, who is the regional or state rep for Celebrate Recovery, Alabama. He has been sharing a lot about the opportunities to have individuals who are dealing with hurts and addictions and pain. There's a way for them to cope with these things in a safe, secure environment, anonymously, by attending Celebrate Recovery. What makes Celebrate Recovery different than a typical AA or Al-Anon or Alateen or one of these other things? What's different about it? Why would anybody want to do that?
Well, it's just I don't want to. There's those programs are all good too, but Celebrate Recovery, we do claim Jesus Christ as our higher power.
So specific to CR is the related Jesus Christ thing.
Yes, Jesus Christ is our higher power, and we use a lot of Bible scripture to go along with the 12 steps and the 8 principles.
Is it churchy?
It's got a church feel to it sometimes, but it's we like to say that if Jesus Christ came back, he would be at Celebrate Recovery because that's where we feel like
it's like a big party, but it's at a church. Is that what you're saying?
It's a real church. It's where people really come that are hurting.
Yeah.
It's not. There's no judgment. There's no condemnation. It's a safe place where you can take the mask off and be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, like I did for years in church, put on this mask of my pornography addiction.
You can be authentic there.
You can be authentic. And,
okay.
Yeah.
You had a question. I saw that your mind was going, and I didn't want to interrupt or step on your question.
So I wanted to get back to your testimony, and I wanted to know how strong the addictions that you had, that you possessed, how strong were they for you to actually come through it? And did your ex-wife...
No, she's deceased.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Did she get the opportunity to see a form of the recovery of the road you took to come back?
No, unfortunately, my first wife didn't see any of the recovery. She saw I never really expressed it with her. I never really talked to her about it, so I kept it a secret. I think she knew, but she was not the kind that felt like I had to change or whatever like that. She
accepted you for who you are.
She accepted me for who I was, but I think she kind of knew, but she just never said anything about it. Maybe if she did, maybe I would have tried to change earlier than that. Or
okay.
Maybe would have been more resolved if she would have been opposed to it, or would have said something about it, but she never did. So
yeah. I think listening to what you just said, which is very critical, a lot of us continue to indulge in the habits that are bad because nobody is ever saying anything. They're just, right. Oh man, I just accept him for who he is, or I'm just let him be him, and when he's ready to grow. But if it's affecting you, or if it's something that you don't like, say something about it, and maybe it can.
That's something about relationships I've been thinking about. That's super important. Is when there's something that your partner is doing that might be affecting you, or that you're doing that might be affecting your partner. If you do not express it with your partner, you're taking the opportunity for them to grow away from them. Because they don't hear it anymore. They don't know. They're not aware. Anytime you express, instead of judging your partner, if you express that this is what's going on and that's how it's affecting me, then you give them an opportunity to grow and actually look at their behavior, whatever the indulgence is. But if you don't do that, then you're just judging it. You're not putting anything on the table. There's no room to grow.
Yeah, and I can agree with what you're saying because my wife and I are going through a divorce right now exactly because of that. We didn't effectively communicate dislikes. We just allow it to fester, and we started to become angry toward one another, and eventually we pulled apart.
Right.
It's great that you guys are talking about the relationship issues that are affected by these addictions. I think it's really surprising that when we think about addictions as guys, a lot of times we think about them just from, what am I dealing with? We don't oftentimes think about the impact of how our choices are affecting other people. You made mention of how your wife and you grew apart. And I mean, I can personally say I had a real difficult time with communication. You wouldn't know it now, but I would not speak. When I got upset, I was not a yeller. I was not a thrower. I was not a violent man. You would never, one, because I didn't want to damage my fingers, because that's how I make my living. You know what I mean? I was too, maybe that's pride, I don't know, but I just didn't want to do anything that was going to damage myself. But what I didn't realize is that internalizing all of that hurt that was being, that was being meted out, all of those emotions were being pressed down, because guys tend not to want to show emotionally that they are being hurt by something, whatever it is, whether it be a crossword or a devious act or whatever. And I think a lot of times what we'll do is internalize it, and then that comes out in the form of these, we'll deal with it through addictions, or we'll deal with it by indulgences that'll mediate the pain while not really dealing with the problem. And what I'm understanding you to say is that Celebrate Recovery actually helps you deal with the problem. Is that not just the addiction, but it helps you get to the hurt through discovery, so that you can deal with the hurt that is the cause of the medicating. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, absolutely. That's there's a process that you go through when you're doing a 12-step group called the inventory. It's a moral inventory. It's basically you just evaluate, you look at yourself, you look at your past,
sure,
you look at your character defects, your character flaws, any of your past hurts, and you lay
them out on the table.
You lay them out on the table,
mm-hmm.
and you just you're able to, based on that, kind of just figure out what's going on. I mean, now I say the Holy Spirit reveals things to me, but it's a process where.
When you started going through that process, did everything come out all at once?
Oh no, absolutely not. Like I said, I've had, or like I don't know if I said this, but I've taken about 5 different step studies.
So you've gone through the 12 steps 5 separate times.
Yes. And
each time, did you find something new?
Each time I found something new. It's like
wow.
There's always some healing that can take place in your life. The first couple times I was working on codependency with my adult kids. I was still working on the pornography issue the whole time, finding out about the low self-worth. Fear of rejection, things I'd never really, it's like they were there, but
you wouldn't voice it to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I would never say, yes, I have fear of rejection. It never really occurred to me, even though it was a major influence on my life.
And the choices.
And the choices that I made.
Right, yeah.
So, all these things were revealed to me through going through the inventory process. And, it's like peeling back an onion. You just keep pulling back layers. There's just more and more every time you peel back. And it's like things, I'm in a step study right now, as a matter of fact. And I just finished my inventory this weekend. And I've discovered other things. That
Even at this stage.
Is
there a stage where it will be okay?
I don't believe so. I believe there's always something that we can be working on. I think there's, it may not be pornography addiction this time, but there could be some hurt. Like I just, something that I realized this weekend was I was carrying a lot of resentment about some bullying that happened to me as an adult, several years ago.
Sure.
And just, I was sitting in my chair just stewing over it because I still haven't let it go, right. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, man, this bullying thing has still got a hold on me.
Right.
I need to forgive these guys. And forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for me.
Right, to unhitch you from that.
That's right.
That's a good point.
That's a great point, and I think that's very important in recovery of any kind, is to be able to express those emotions and address them in a really raw and honest way. But you talk about letting go of emotions. So is there some process you follow? How exactly are you able to do that? Is it just forgiveness? Do you introspect? Do you meditate? Or do you interact?
Roy will answer that right after these messages.
The Conversations from the Cave show is sponsored by Optique Huntsville, signature looks for men with discriminating taste. Design your signature look with stylists from Optique Huntsville. For more information, call 256-886-7281. Now, back to the Man Cave with Kirk Kennedy and the CFTC crew.
So just before the break, Slim was asking a question. Go ahead, Slim.
So my question was, you talk about this episode of bullying that was haunting you and that you were holding on to, that was affecting you, and you had to let go of it, and that's an important step towards recovery. So how were you able to let go of it? Is there some process you follow, meditation or talking to people or just venting? What exactly is your process?
Well, for me, thinking about it, and realizing that forgiveness is for me and not for them is part of it. But something I like to do, this is just me personally, is what good came out of it? If there's any good out of it.
What good came out of the bullying, or what good came out of the forgiving?
What good came out of the bullying? Was there any good that came out of it? And so I meditated on that. And for me, the bullying, I feel like I'm free of it now, is I realize that, because of that, now I don't like hate groups. And I don't like injustice because I was bullied. So things like injustice and hate groups just really, don't have a place in my life. I just really hate when I see this kind of injustice going on in the world.
Right.
And once I realized that, there was some good that came out of this, I was able to say, I forgive the guy.
Right.
That's a great point. So this is great. Wow, that's actually so profound, because when you think about bad things that happen in life, a lot of times the reason why we don't forgive is because we're rehearsing the bad that was done to us, and we feel that if we let it go, it devalues our worth in some ways by saying, oh man, they did that to me. How awful they must be to do that to me, right? So if I forgive them, then that means I'm a doormat to them. In a way, that's the stopping point a lot of times for where unforgiveness is. It's like, they violated me. If I forgive them, that means that, quote, they can violate me again, which isn't true. That's not true, actually. It actually is empowering to forgive, and it does unhook you from the downward spiral, but we believe this thought process. Now, what you did is took it to a completely different level. What you did was, not only did you remove the victimization by saying what good came from it, you actually found that it gave you something for which you could be thankful.
Yes.
That is profound. That's healing right there, brother.
Yep.
That's some deep healing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut across, Slim. Go ahead. Wow.
No,
I am blown away by that.
I think that's a great point to bring up, because we always talk about forgiveness, but what you've added is a layer of gratitude to it. That,
yes.
Hey, I forgive you and thank you for coming into my life and putting me on the path that I'm in right now.
Right.
And no, I fully agree. I had a point, I completely lost it, because that was a great point.
But that thing blew me away, because you know what? I've heard that twice. In the last 2 days, I've been doing an intensive, exhaustive study on the mindset of narcissists, because we're going to do a show on narcissism. Narcissism is such an insidious, terrible thing that happens to a lot of people. But the thing that you just said was that a narcissist may come into your life to give you something you didn't have, just like the bully did. Because narcissists are nothing more than highly intellectual bullies. That's all they are. We talked about shaming and shunning. We talked about isolationism. We talked about emotional abuse. We talked about sucking people back in. We talked about how they manipulate the circumstances around you. They try to make you out to be crazy. Those are elements of narcissism. But what's interesting is we have never talked about how the narcissist coming into your life may actually equip you to deal with other things and may give you a blessing. Because the truth is, I actually thank God for my narcissist. I really do. I mean, this is why what you said just was an epiphany moment. I thank God for that narcissist. Now, they're not in my life. I've shut them out of my life. They're completely gone, and they don't matter anymore. But what they taught me was, one, I am far more my authentic self as a result of the narcissist. Because what they do is they tear down any facade because they want to expose you to the world as a bad person. So they will look for anything or create anything to increase what makes you look bad so that they can feel good about themselves. That's what narcissists do, right? So in that process, what do most of us want to do? We want to be valid. We want to be significant. We want to be whole. We want to be healthy. So if a narcissist goes out and says, you're not whole, you're not healthy, you're crazy, you're bad, you're this, everything that you build is built upon this foundation. Well, if a narcissist comes along and attempts to destroy that or does destroy it, what are you left with? The question is, what are you left with? Well, guess what you're left with? You. You're left with you. If you don't have anybody else, if you're not surrounded by anybody else, all of a sudden, your strength, your inner strength, when there's no one to fight for you but you, when there's no one to speak up for you but you, when there's nothing else that you can lose but you, there's no money left but what you can make. At some point, you have to thank them for allowing the real you to be seen.
That's an interesting.
Even yeah. It's just
because a lot of times we put our self-esteem on external things.
On external things.
But if like those external things are constantly being put down,
then you have to come for something. Yeah.
You have to go take a step back and like, oh well, the fact that external thing does not matter anymore, or this my situation is causing me to devalue it.
Right.
What else do I have? What do I have? And you keep asking that question. What do I have?
What am I?
Yeah, and
not just what do you have, but what am I? What am I apart? So what you said, Roy, was when that person brings that into your life, they caused you to begin a process of introspection that said, what good came of it? You became more equipped to be able to evaluate something else for its merits because of your experience.
Yes.
And see, that's the thing that a narcissist does, because they are really awful people. They're toxic people.
I will put I want to argue that. So
you don't want to argue. You want to argue whether or not narcissists are good or bad.
I want to say that you can look at the narcissist as an evil person. They're also a person ultimately that have their own shame that they're carrying with them, and they've been hurt too. And that's just the defense mechanism that they adapted to kind of deal with their hurt.
Narcissistic personality disorder actually is a much different thing where they don't have the ability to empathize. So they don't really, just to tell you, the definition of narcissism means that individual actually does not have the capability of giving compassion unless it serves an end. So
but
you're saying that's a coping mechanism.
No, what I'm saying is, what is it that's blocking their ability to empathize? That's the real question, is what is it that's stopping them from empathizing? And that's the issue that needs to be healed in that situation. Just because, just as any other person might have an addiction that they use as a coping mechanism,
They use people as their addiction.
That's also
Right,
an
that's
addiction. That's also an
yeah,
addiction.
right.
That is a coping mechanism, and that can also, for example, somebody who's an addict or who is going through a situation where they're depending on something external,
Sure.
they don't look at other people because all they really need is to fulfill that void, that need. They don't see left or right. They don't care. There is no empathy there. All there is how do I take this pain away that's inside me? That's how simple the thought process is. So for somebody who's narcissistic, it's a similar thing. They're human too, and there's the same pain. And that's all the solution they've seen so far is, oh wow, if I can put other people down, I feel okay for a second, my pain goes away. And that's the addiction. And you cannot take the human part away though, because if you do, then you're shaming them further for being narcissistic, and that's the reason why
It becomes you believe that becomes self-perpetuating.
exactly.
There's an old movie called The Breakfast Club that's based off of what we're talking about, and it's two girls and three guys, and one of the guys is just a bully. But what happens is they all go to detention on a Saturday, and they actually have the opportunity to sit down and discuss what's going on in their life. And as they're discussing what's going on in their life, they start to realize that this guy really isn't bad at all. He dressed like a punk rock, all, broken down, beat up. And then you have the classy girl, then you have the weird girl, you have a good football guy, you have a nice nerdy guy, but they all have unique passes. And then when you dive into their background, you kind of see that one is being abused by his daddy. The other one, daddy, is an alcoholic who talks crazy to his mother. And the bully is affected with something, and this is why he's a bully. Going back to what Brother Hank King said, is that he was appreciative of the guy. Most of us don't understand. We have to sometimes look at it from a different perspective.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you believe hate the sin, not the sinner.
Right, because everybody have sin in them.
So what I'm hearing you say is by not judging the sinner, but simply not appreciating the sin, then
Right.
you can forgive easier.
Right,
Right.
exactly. Because now
Right.
you're forgiving a human being. You're not forgiving the devil or the evil force or the
Right.
sin. You're not forgiving the sin. You're forgiving the human being that was placed in a situation where that's
Yes.
how they chose to cope. And it's really unfortunate that that's how it happened. But you can forgive them now because they're a human being too, and they've been hurt too, and they're going through their stuff too. Just to think that they're not hurting means that you don't have to forgive. If they're not hurting, then you don't have to forgive, right?
Let's
I believe you do. See, that's where we differ. I actually believe the process of forgiveness isn't for the perpetrator, but the one who has had the recipient of the wrong.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So, and I believe that was what you were saying.
Yes.
So in the way that I'm looking at it, which is just parsing it a bit, right? There are some things that you can forgive. Things, right? So you can forgive a crossword, you can forgive an act, you can forgive a wrong, right? There are some circumstances which may be perpetually toxic.
Right.
Those might be rooted deeply in the person. Those issues that are toxic might be deeply rooted in the person, right?
Right.
So sometimes you might forgive their actions, and you might actually forgive the fact that they are a human being who's flawed. But in doing that, sometimes in order to be healthy yourself, you may have to also parse that relationship so that the toxicity doesn't become a codependent process that keeps you intertangled or intertwined with their toxicity. Some people become healthy where others may not see themselves as sick. And
Agree.
unfortunately,
Right.
when you have that situation, you can't heal a person who doesn't come for treatment. You can't. And oftentimes, the person who's, in the case of narcissists, they oftentimes feign that they're getting better, but they're not doing the work to do that. They're not going through the process like what we were just talking about, where you do the self-reflection, you do the changing, the hard work of forgiveness, the hard work of reconciliation, the hard work of self-examination, the catharsis of your wrongs.
Right. And I see what you're saying. So what you're saying is some people believe that there's nothing wrong with them,
Right.
so they continue.
All
they
that's
continue,
wrong is with you.
Right, with the other person or with
Right.
the world.
With the world,
and they
yeah,
continue
anything.
to do what they're doing.
Right.
And the other person actually seeks healing and they want to grow. But here's the thing: the person who is seeking the healing, there was a time when they didn't want to grow. There was a time when they were stuck in their pain, when they did not see a way out, and that's all they believed to be the truth.
Right.
And that was it. And what I'm saying is the narcissist, just like that other person who is seeking something healthy now, is a human being. And when you look at them as human beings, then you also give them the opportunity to make that change within themselves.
I got you. I
And
can get there with you.
and then they can be on their journey too. But if
Right.
you tell them already that you're a narcissist and you cannot be healed or fixed, then they are stuck with that reality, right? But if you realize they're human beings who are hurt, who just are not ready to grow right now, but potentially they could later, just like any other human being, because we're all the same, we're all equal, then they can. And that's all I'm saying.
That's a beautiful topic. We'll be right
The
back after these
Conversations
messages.
from the Cave Show is produced by the Provox Media Group. The Provox Media Group provides custom digital media and production services to ethical businesses around the world. For more information, call 256-361-9127 or visit provoxmediagroup.com. Now, back to the Man Cave with Kirk Kennedy and the CFTC crew.
We're back. Slim made a great point just before the break, and that point was that everyone potentially has the ability to change, and at the time of their journey, they have to make that choice to begin that journey. But we, on the other side, cannot judge them as being impossible to change. We have to give them the freedom to be a human being on a journey. And by allowing them that freedom, their reality can become something different. And giving them the choice to be able to choose that is something every human being can have. Is that pretty much what you were saying?
Yes, that's right. The idea is shame only perpetuates the problem and the addiction and whatever the coping mechanism is. And if you tell a person, if you shame the person that, hey, you're this person, it's a condition, it's this or that, and you cannot change, you cannot grow, you're already limiting them.
I see what you're saying. So the point is about giving people the freedom to change and grow.
Right.
Right. And so what you were thinking is that the comments that I was making were suggestive that the narcissist was incapable of change.
That's exactly right. You know how they say that you can take the horse to the
Water,
to the
but you
water,
can't make them drink.
You can't make them drink. But hey, here's the thing: you can take them to the water. Just because you can't make them drink does not mean you shouldn't take them to the water. You should take them to the water. That way, at least you give them an opportunity to drink.
So the beauty of what you said, and I accept that actually. I like what you said. I can get there with you. I like it. And the reason why is because I think that every human being has the potential for choice. And the potential for choice gives them the freedom to change. I don't know that everyone will take it, but I like the fact that you leave the opportunity available for anyone who has an addiction, whether it be a sexual addiction, a personality disorder that causes abuse addiction. So some people thrive off of abusing other people. They need that. You know what I'm saying? Like they feed off of that.
Right.
So there is the ability for people to change, and I like that you have left the door open, which I think is merciful, because a lot of times I do think your point is well taken. I do sometimes make errant judgments about people's ability to change. And that isn't correct. So I need to reverse my comments on that, because I think you're actually right. I think everybody who has the ability to make a choice has the ability to change. I do think that it is harder for some than others, and I think that addictions in particular make it tough to make even that choice. But I do believe that it is possible, because I know personally that, in my journey, I had some challenges with the ladies, maybe not like Brother Man to my to my right here, but I had some challenges, and I changed. I made a choice that I just didn't want to live that life. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And Roy, you made a very similar choice, and I like what you're saying. You checked me on that. I appreciate that. So tell us what the journey has been like now. You're
61 days.
361 days
free
sober.
From pornography.
Yeah. And how many years on the alcohol and?
Well, I lost count since '94. What's that? 25 years almost.
So yeah, at that point, it's a done deal for you.
So, and I hope to one day get the pornography to the point where I feel
about the other things
that I feel about the other things, where they're not an issue at all. Because I can't say that about pornography yet. I filter all my phones, my laptops. I still.
You put barricades and boundaries in to protect yourself.
To protect myself, because I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'll be okay, but I don't know that I would be okay if the temptation hits me real hard. The temptation still does hit me. It comes out of nowhere sometimes.
Sure.
This week, I've been really good. I haven't really, my mind's been no images popping up in my mind, nothing like that. So it's been real good, but it just, when it hits me out of nowhere, it just catches me off guard sometimes.
Sure.
But it's been the longer it goes, the better it is, I guess.
Yeah. You had a comment?
Well, basically what I was going to say is there's a guy that I admire a lot. He's a rapper by the name of DMX, and when he recovered several times, he had relapses such as yourself. He was on a talk show, and a lady asked him, is he finally done? And he's like, I would never be finally done. I would always be fighting. That's one thing about someone that has an addiction. You're going to always be addicted to something, and you're going to always be fighting your addiction, so you'll never be free. Even myself, with, the dealing with women, I'm always fighting those urges, suppressing those urges to go and talk just because of the physique.
Does it get easier?
It's never easier. I'm never going to sit up here and say, oh, it gets easier. Like,
for me, it's easier.
But then that's not your addiction. But that's something, if it was an addiction, you would always be fighting to suppress. Roy have to watch who comes into his circle with drinks. You know what I'm saying? Because those people can be an influence. Not that he want to do it, but it can just be an influence. So with me, with women, I have to be careful of where I'm at, because I want to just touch. I want to sample because of how they look. Are they good? They can be the dirtiest, filthiest person. But because of how they look, that's my fight.
Now I will say this. I think one of the reasons why you might be right that it isn't necessarily my addiction. It might have been my preference.
Right.
Because I was very selective in the company that I kept. I didn't just, there were certain things that I wouldn't do because I just felt like, right. You know what I'm saying? So maybe, because addiction will take you places you don't necessarily want to go. So that could be true. That could have just been a bad habit. You know what I'm saying? But I guess I want to give men hope. And the picture you paint is that even though it's a struggle, it never gets easier? Why would you want to fight against something that never gets easier?
Because it's something that you have to deal with. You have to act, first of all, it's owning up to what you know is your weakness.
Yeah.
Once you own up to knowing what your weakness is, now you know how to redirect your urges. Yes, I can be in the vicinity of women. Yes, I want to talk to all these women, but is it necessary? No. Let me come out here to do what I wanted to do. Have a good time. Suppressing it with having a good time. Why? Because I have a woman at home. I can go back to her. I don't have to. I have to get to a point where I realize I don't have to have all of these women or just sample all of these women. They're just a woman at the end of the day.
So I see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
With any issue like that, or any sort of urge, I would say, with anything, it could be something as easy as just wanting to eat a lot of sugar. That's an addiction for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But with any urge, I think there are two different mechanisms. One is on the surface level where you can train your mind. So what's happening is you get an urge, an impulse, and you start having thoughts associated with an action.
Yeah.
From that stimulus.
Yeah.
And whatever that action is, either you can create pathways in your brain to rationalize that voice, and just make it calm down, or distract it, or ignore it, and have that other voice, the voice of rationality, make it stronger with practice.
Yes.
That the intensity of the urge is still going to be there, but now you have this muscle that kind of can tone it down. The other way, which I think Roy has been talking about this whole time, it has to do with actually taking that urge is coming from a source. It's coming from a source. There's pain, and when you do emotional work, when you cry, when you let go of emotions, what you're doing is you're looking at the source now, and you're reducing that impulse. You're working on that, because now you don't come from a place where you need that. It doesn't have value anymore. So now you're coming from a place where that urge it's a voice, but it's not as intense. So you can either turn down the volume, or you can cover your head,
or you can pull the plug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would
Go
also like to add with saying, be humble and not be cocky. Because as soon as you think, oh man, I got this under control, it's when the devil come in and say, oh, here you go. Boom.
Hits you out of nowhere.
It kicks you out of nowhere.
You mentioned that. Yeah. The rebound.
I think a lot of that has to do with your ego, because you took your self-esteem from something that was unhealthy. You removed it from that. And then you had your struggle. And then you look at your struggle and you put your esteem on that, oh, look at me. I could conquer that. I'm so much better than my struggle.
Yeah.
Look at all these.
I've done that.
Yeah. And then
which makes you susceptible to falling into the cycle again.
It's the same, you basically take your external validation and you put it on something else that's external.
Right.
Which is action. It's action. It's action you're taking, but now that action is your validation. As soon as that breaks, bam, you're back to where you started.
I wish the people out there could have saw his expression when he was saying that, And the thing about it is how happy you was when you figured out that you conquered something. But the reality is the side that nobody would ever see when you fall again. That side, that dark side that you now look in the mirror and you see that other person is like, dang, I'm back here again. Now I got to go through this whole 364 days to get back to where I was.
One thing I love this quote. It's from this author. His name's Neil Strauss, and the book is called The Truth. It's a book about how to heal through your relationships. Because the relationships are a good indicator. The effect you have on people around you is a good indicator of how you're doing in your life.
Yeah.
So a good way to improve yourself is to work on your relationships.
Sure.
And
I can see that.
One statement that he makes is, if you relapse or if you go through something, you shouldn't beat yourself up, because recovery is sort of like climbing a hill. You might be looking at the same view, but from a higher ground.
Nice.
So you are improving. You're always improving, and I have faith in that. But then at the same time, don't judge yourself, because then you're perpetuating the shame again.
Right.
Don't judge yourself.
Right.
Just let it go, bit by bit. Let it go.
Right.
And any work you put in, any work, one day, that matters, it counts. And that should be enough to know that you're climbing. You're not stuck in the same place.
That's good stuff. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll wrap up this episode of Conversations from the Cave.
On the next Conversations from the Cave.
On the next Conversations from the Cave, we're going to continue our discussion with Roy Kane about the journey through Celebrate Recovery, and then also how to continue having positive relationships healing through those relationships, and then how we as men can be more communicative and healthy as a whole. Until next time, love one another.
Conversations from the Cave is brought to you by the Alabama Cornea Care Center, a copywritten production of the Provox Media Group, creators of positive, inspirational media for businesses and nonprofit organizations around the world. For more information, visit the Provox Media Group at provoxmediagroup.com or call 256-886-0405. The views expressed on this program are the personal beliefs of the panelists and do not necessarily represent the beliefs of the Provox Media Group or its sponsors.